Everyone, this is Dr. Garrett Smith of the Nutrition Detective, and we are here today with a very special guest. We are here today with Rome Za of highperformanceprotocols.com. And those of you who are familiar or you're in the Love Your Liver program, there is a breath section in there that has we like Rome's breathwork e-product, and it's out there. It's information product, and we recommend it. And I have updated the links in there because Rome has updated the program. And if you haven't seen it, on that breathwork issue, I did a whole live stream of how toxicity can actually be relieved. You could improve your detox or make your detox slower through your breath. And that's part of why I incorporated Rome's breathwork in there. And yeah, so he's here today. So thanks for coming, Rome.
Oh, it was my pleasure, bro. Anytime I get to talk to you is my pleasure.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Rome's pretty funny. You'll catch that through the show. Rome and I, Rome joined a client who was working with me, and he got to hear me go through a client session, and we became friends after that. I've gone out to visit his, what do you call them? The Rome retreats, or the, the compound?
We do retreats.
Retreats, yes. So I got to visit Rome out at he's had a couple different locations, so I got to see him at both of them now. And it was a lot of fun. And I do want to say that some of the things I've learned from Rome, some really cool physical routines, ankle work, leg strength stuff, I'm still using weekly. Absolutely. So Rome, give us a little bit more information about your background and how you came to combining all these cool things.
Yeah, I grew up super sick. And when I was about 12 years old, my father introduced me to weightlifting. I started weightlifting and strength training and doing all types of stuff. And then I started Thai boxing and then boxing and then wrestling. And then when I was 18, that's when I started wrestling, and I wanted to compete, but you can't really compete in wrestling when you're 18 because it's too late. So then I started jiu-jitsu. And when I started jiu-jitsu, I fell in love with it. And I started training 6 days a week, twice a day. I was competing every other weekend. I wanted to be a black belt world champion in 3 years. That was my goal. And it broke my body. It broke my body pretty bad. I had 2 herniated discs in my neck. I tore both my rotator cuffs. I tore both my elbows, labrum in my hip, my LCL, my ankle. I mean, I definitely went through the rounds when it came to destroying my body. I didn't know any better. Like, everybody does it, so it's just like that's the way you go. And then I had all of the toxicity from the past. I was taking antibiotics 4 to 6 times every year since I was a kid for all types of stuff, antifungals, antibiotics, like skin, like topical skin stuff, and I didn't want to get surgery. Like, I went to the doctors, they told me they wanted to do surgery on my neck, they wanted to do cortisone shots, and I said no, because I was 22 years old. I don't want my neck fused at 22. I want to be able to do things as an adult, as I got older. So that started my journey of figuring it out. I started flying all over the world, training with different coaches and trainers and healers and shamans and anybody that I thought had a piece of the puzzle. And then I would bring it into my mind, my body, and then I would figure out how to synthesize it and where it fits in the puzzle. So rebuilding the joints, rebuilding the fascia, breath work for rebuilding the nervous system. I mean, lots of detox stuff, nutrition stuff. I mean, anything that fits into this human dynamic puzzle that we are living in this current world, because everything is related. There is nothing that's unrelated. The movement, the breath work, the detox, the nutrition, the communication, the sleep protocols, the mitigation of non-native frequencies. There's just so much there, like what your food ate, the environment that your food grew up in. I mean, there's just so many of these pieces that for the last 20 years, I've been tinkering with and figuring out where they fit together and what the sequencing is. And yeah, that's kind of been my journey in a nutshell.
Awesome. Well, you were a champ in jiu-jitsu too, though, right?
Yeah, I won a lot of tournaments. I won a lot of tournaments. And when doctors told me I'll never compete again at 22, when I started this process of rebuilding my body, 2 years later, I competed in the Pan Ams and took second.
Awesome. Awesome. So yeah, you keep trying to pull me into jiu-jitsu and my knee just doesn't want me to go. We're going to work on that though, right?
Yeah, we're going to work on that. You still have one more place to visit, our new retreat.
Yes. Yes, I do need to get there. Okay, so let's head into the questions I have for you. So we have to untrained eyes out there, it seems that our approaches can be very different in terms of you're doing a lot of breath work and movement and fascia and detox, but as we look deeper into it, there is actually a lot of overlap. I have tons of influences. You have tons of influences. So what first stood out to you about the work that we do here, and how do you see it fitting together with yours?
I really like you, because I'm serious, because an organization, an idea can only grow up to the point of where the leadership is. So what I really enjoyed about your approach is that it was very open-minded. You had a very holistic perspective on the approach, and you also introduced me to things I've never heard about. For example, like vitamin A toxicity. I never even thought that vitamin A could be toxic. It's not even a nutrient that I even thought of. It was just kind of like something that passed through, almost like past my consciousness. And when I heard that, it was very interesting. And honestly, it took a lot of effort to dig my teeth into, because it took a complete unwinding of what I was consuming or what I was looking at in terms of putting in my body. It was definitely a big shift. And I really enjoy your out of the box ideas, and also how open-minded you are to the work, as long as it has some sort of either heuristic or empirical evidence. Because I thought that was really cool. You were very non-dogmatic. So you had a very almost non-religious approach to detox and to healing, and you were willing to go places where I think other naturopaths and nutritionists aren't willing to go. And I thought that was it's very telling of the character that you've developed over the years.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I just see it as I know a lot of your approach or your journey through all this is more physical based than mine, and mine was more the biochemically, if you want to call it that. But we're both kind of coming towards the crisscross, and that's why I really wanted I'm glad to have you here and wanted to talk to you more about it. So let's go into we kind of hit on that one. What made you think that the work I do and the work you do was worth collaborating on? How do you see them overlapping and all that?
I thought that they overlap, and the fact that movement, your movement is going to be limited by the toxicity of your body. Your movement is going to be limited by how open your nervous system is. If your nervous system is closed, you're constantly in a flexed state in a physical way. When your nervous system is constantly stuck in a sympathetic place, you're not detoxing what you should be detoxing. I thought that there was a lot of overlap there, because your approach opens up the potential for movement, the potential for the nervous system to open up, because it's all interrelated. If you move well, but you're super toxic, like you eventually your movement practice is going to be very limited. Why? Well, because you're going to have massive bile dumps when you're overworking. You're going to have you're going to have anxiety and depression because you have all these toxins inside of you, from the heavy metals to the vitamin A to the glyphosates, whatever, right? Like, so it's going to be limited. So I thought that they work hand in hand in a very beautiful, chaotic even, right? Because it's not a linear process for anybody. Like not movement, not detox, not breath work, not life. Life is not a linear process. It's working in this spiraling fashion. And what I liked about your approach was you weren't selling a step-by-step approach. You were selling a system in which you have to keep coming back to certain things to remember certain processes, if that makes sense. Because it's like you're never done. You're just constantly in the process of doing.
It would be nice in this world if we could get to a place where we were done, right? But the assaults just keep coming. But yeah, one of the things that I think is really, this is the part that I've been trying, I'm going to figure out how to integrate, and your stuff would help with that. So it's like the toxicity can actually change how we move, right? And actually, one of the things we're going to get into is like what Kelsey's been getting into, and we're gonna do some stuff on it, is like sleep apnea. Like, we're actually figuring out that certain toxicities, especially copper toxicity, can make your tongue like dumb and weak. And then at night, it's actually in the research, like this sleep apnea and Wilson's disease and sleep disorders is totally connected. But then the thing that we have to do, and I've talked about this before, where your work can help in, can come in a lot, is when the toxicity causes your body to forget. You can fix the toxicity, but that doesn't make your body remember how to do it. Like, we have, just like a baby has to learn how to walk again. Well, a person who, breaks their back has to learn how to walk again, literally. So when these muscles or nervous system or whatever kind of becomes dumbed down, we have to train it again so it can remember what it's supposed to do. And this is where I think the breath work, like you could breathe wrong because you learned wrong, or you got different patterns in you, and toxicity has nothing to do with it. You still have to learn it again. Toxicity could make you breathe wrong, and then you still have to learn again. So the actual, this whole sack of meat that we were given to do this stuff, like, there's a lot of stuff that can affect it. And if we can address both I do need to have a lot more movement stuff in my work to help people to get out of it. I highly recommend, movement, but we get people who are so sick, as we get people who are so sick that movement wrecks them. And we got to bring them out of that so that they can then do the retraining and all that stuff. So yeah, so that's awesome. That is definitely where our stuff overlaps. Okay. So what originally drew you into the kind of work where you are like blending stuff like martial arts, movement, breath work, and natural healing? What got you there?
Well, because I was broken, I was broken, and I wanted to fix myself, and I wanted to, realistically, like, when I kind of like gave up my superficial dreams of becoming a world champion, my dreams changed. My dreams became, I wanted to stay independent until the day that I die. I want to be a threat to my grandchildren, even after they're training jiu-jitsu as adults, to know that grandpa is a dangerous man. And those became my goals. I wanted to feel good and great, and maybe even exceptional on the mornings that I wake up, even after training. So those became my goals. They became more process oriented than destination oriented. And that pulled me into more holistic practices. And as I started to dig deeper and I started to look at martial arts in a more ancient, traditional way, what I found was that most ancient martial artists used to be healers as well. Like they used to carry acupuncture needles with them, and they had knowledge of herbs, and they had knowledge of the terrain that in which they lived in. They knew how to bone set. So it wasn't so specialized as it is now, where it's like, oh, you have a broken bone. Well, you have to go to this orthopedist that specializes in the right pinky.
Right.
And back then it was just like, no, you set, I mean, who else is going to set your bone on the battlefield? Like it's you, or it's the guy next to you. So that brought me into a deeper awareness of how it used to be. I would say maybe possibly in the golden age of martial arts, where they were more holistic and a lot less specialized. Now you look at jiu-jitsu and it's just like two guys slap hands, one guy sits on the floor, they fight like cripples. So it's become very specialized. And that happened to Kung Fu also, where it started to be like, oh, like our style only does wrist locks, or our style only does this, where it's just like, no, a fight is a fight. And martial arts, there's the aspect of arts there, and artists are a lot more open and willing to experiment, I think. And I think in some of the ways that you do things, there's a bit of an art to it as well. And as much of a scientist as you are, to be as open-minded as you are, it requires a bit of an art form as well. So that's what brought me into these more holistic practices. And then every time I would look deeper, I would find breath work. I would find that the breath is where it begins. Like when you're born, you know a baby is viable when it takes its first breath. And you know a person is not viable when they don't take any more breaths, right? So I was like, well, what if we can improve what we do in between, because we can live about 3 weeks without water, without food, right? And about 3 days without water, obviously depending on the terrain, the climate, blah, blah, blah. But you're not going to live that long without breath. So I was just like, we've got to start there. It seems like it's very important. And that's what kind of like had me study. So far, every protocol that I've ever found on the planet thus far for breath work. So I don't really come from a dogmatic approach of breath work either. Like it's not just the Buteyko method or this method, because they're all a small piece. And I think a lot of people get lost in like the name more so than what's actually going on physiologically.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Just on that note, like I got into health because of my health issues. And I got into bodybuilding, then nutrition, and then health, because I was like, I want to know how to, if anybody needs to know how to do this, it's me.
Yeah.
Right. Not that I'm not saying I'm the only person I could trust, but that you're always going to be there. Right. So everybody else might not be, but you're still there. So yeah, that's, some people might think it's kind of like selfish, but it's really just coming out of a place of you can't help other people until you help yourself kind of thing. That's the way I see it. Okay, so
I think so. There's a Russian saying, "Sapozhnik bez sapog," which means a shoemaker with no shoes. And I feel like a lot of the health community lives in that space. Like everybody knows, but when you look at it, they can't show it.
Yeah. I joke about the mechanic with a broken car. It's the same thing. But then there's also, in the social media days, there's a lot of health influencers who they put out one face and behind it, they're absolutely wrecks, and they will never tell anybody.
Because they're invested.
Yeah. Okay, so let's head into, you often say that most people today are breathing wrong. What does that mean? And why is proper breathing so foundational to the way God designed our bodies to heal?
When we start our day in a panic or with an anxiety, we start our day in a more flexed state, which alters our breathing as well, right? So when we're in that sympathetic state or that fight or flight state or the spectrum of it, we start to have a lot of neck pain and tightness, lower back pain, digestive issues, because the way that we breathe is supposed to be helping to massage the food. Also, in Chinese medicine, they talk about the kidneys being responsible for energy. Well, when you breathe properly, it's massaging the kidneys as well. So most people, and I've measured over 4,000 people in the last, I don't know, 7 or 8 years now, probably closer to 5,000 now. But most people breathe at the nipples and up to the clavicles. So that's a problem because that's stimulating the sympathetic nervous system. The universe or God or whatever this intelligent designer that made this body made this area specifically to break in case of emergency. Like they have those signs and the acts, it's like that. But the problem is most people get stuck there and they become stuck in this fight or flight dominant state. So when I talk about breath, primarily at the first level of it, which is like the Breakthrough Breathwork course, is specifically focused on not how to breathe specifically primarily, but where to breathe in your body. Because where comes before how. How, there's tons of different systems to how, but where is really important. So understanding that our like the belly area, the front of the diaphragm would be zone 1, lateral expansion of the ribs, zone 2, and then posterior expansion of the ribs would be zone 3. Most people, and I see it in sports a lot, people break their ribs or tear their cartilage. A lot of that has to do with the fact that their ribs have forgotten how to expand in a 360-degree plane. And that requires sort of like a physical therapy. Think of the breakthrough breath work, at least the first parts of it, as physical therapy. So opening up the front, opening up the sides, retraining so you're not breathing here, and putting yourself back into a parasympathetic state. So most people are breathing wrong, but more importantly, most people are seeing the world from a wrong perspective, because when you look at everything as dangerous, you miss a lot of the opportunities that are presented in front of you in your life, and you start to make decisions based on survival as if a saber-toothed tiger is chasing you right now, and not based on what does my life look like in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, I talk about on the show a lot, like, and even just praying, like praying for solutions. Like it's like becoming active and not just being a victim, and actively trying to find solutions coming to you. So yeah, that all makes sense. And the breathing thing, yeah, I've done your the old breathwork course you had, and that was a lot of opening up stuff. Definitely.
Yeah. I mean, prayer is very active. Prayer is very active when it's done with intention and attention.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Okay, so let's head on to the next one. So many of our listeners and the Love Your Liver people have done a lot of detox stuff, yet they may still feel kind of stuck or not as strong as they want to be. Why do you think that happens, even after cleaning up the body's chemistry? We kind of talked about that already.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of that happens is like there's so many different perspectives for breath, right? Like we can talk about the physiological perspective, but then we can talk about like the chemistry perspective, where it's like our breath is responsible for getting rid of, they say, about 70% of our metabolic waste. And they also say that the average person breathes anywhere from 20 to 25,000 times per day. But the average person is a sick human being. So that means that if each person breathes anywhere from 20 to 25,000 breaths per day, that means that they're breathing anywhere from 14 to 17 breaths per minute.
That's a lot.
Yeah. So if you look at it from a clinical perspective, when I worked in the hospital, I think they raised it, but it was anywhere between 12 and 15 breaths per minute means that you're in an anxious state. So if you're in an anxious state between 12 and 15 breaths per minute, and the average person breathes 14 to 17 breaths per minute, we have a problem here, right? So when you're detoxing properly, you want to use all of your tools, right? Like you have your liver, you have your skin, and then you also have your lungs. And your lungs, I would say, are the primary method to detoxing a lot of this metabolic waste that's developing in your body. So when you're going through a detox, when any Herx reaction can cause anxiety for some people, migraines for others, or I mean, a myriad of issues, right? Like everybody presents differently, and breath work helps to calm down the nervous system so you can feel like everything is okay. Because it is, like, everything is okay. It's all going to be okay. It's all going to work out. This too shall pass. And when you incorporate these patterns in your breath and you do it properly, and it takes 10 minutes a day, and you do it enough times, your body starts to be like, oh, this feels good. I'm going to start doing this when I'm sleeping. And that's when you know things are having big shifts, because you go from like consciously incompetent or unconsciously incompetent to unconsciously competent. And you go through the pieces, and then your body just remembers, because when you were a child, you used to detox great. Like there was a certain point between 3.5 and 5.5 years old before you went to school that your breathing was perfect. And then it stopped. And then it stopped, and it stopped being perfect, and it started to be a little bit more imperfect. Yeah. So I don't know. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. No, actually, I wanted to mention one of the things we talk a lot about in the Love Your Liver program is aldehydes and detoxing aldehydes. Now, aldehydes are what they call volatile compounds, so they go into the air very easily. Examples of you detoxing through your breath, right, would be like when people eat garlic or onions, and then you can smell it on their breath, right? Your body's trying to get rid of it. When somebody drinks alcohol, and then the next day you can smell it on their breath and coming out of their skin. Like these are ways, especially the breath can get rid of a lot of stuff. So if we can, in a stress state, right, your breathing's less deep, and so you're not gonna. The simplistic way I'm thinking of it is you're not going to get as deep into breathing out the stuff that is in your lungs. You're just going to kind of stay shallow, and you're not going to get it. But if you can breathe properly and more deeply, then you can get down and get more of that trash out, if you will. So does that sound about right to you?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm always learning stuff when I listen to you speak. But yeah, that sounds about right. So Dylan Black, he asked, wouldn't that mean that breathing more would cause more detox?
Right.
No, it doesn't. And I'll tell you why. Because when you breathe shallow and you breathe a lot, that doesn't mean that you're breathing optimally to actually get rid of everything. Because most of your air-filled sacs, your alveoli, live not here where most people are breathing. Only 20% live here. Most of them live in the lower lungs. So when you're breathing optimally, you can move a lot more liters of oxygen or carbon dioxide per breath. So no, it would be just optimizing where you breathe so that you can get rid of more. And the most important part in your breathing is how you exhale. That's something to always remember, how you exhale, because your exhales are connected to the most amount of breathing muscles that are connected to your diaphragm. So we have about 11 pounds on average. So that's a lot of inactivated muscles, and it's the deepest layers of your core. So when people don't breathe properly, especially women after they give birth, or runners have a lot of pelvic floor dysfunction. Like people with pelvic floor dysfunction, they have a lot of problems with exhales and connecting their diaphragms to work together, because we have a lot of diaphragms. We have this, we have the pelvic floor, we have the butthole. They're all diaphragms.
Yeah, that whole pelvic floor is part of the I don't know, the compression of it's got to keep everything in, properly and relax properly.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a big part. Okay. So from your perspective, how does the nervous system itself influence detox, and why can't the body fully release toxins if it's living in survival mode?
When the body is living in survival mode, it's holding on. It's in a tense state. It's constantly in a tense state, and it's breathing very poorly, mostly because if you think about tension and you think about yourself in a flex state, your shoulders are over your diaphragm. So your posture is poor, and there's pain, and pain creates a cycle with the sympathetic nervous system. So the more pain and flexion you have, the worse you're breathing, the more pain and flexion you have. And the more of that's going on, the poorer your exhales are, and well, the poorer your detox process is. So it's just this really crazy loop that I found, at least in my practice, that because I started with holistic nutrition after jiu-jitsu, and I found that it's very challenging to change people's habits in consumption, right? Because we have so much cultural, emotional, psychological, spiritual connections and I would say like strings attached to food. So I found that changing their nervous system, because a lot of people eat comfort foods, right? So when you're in a sympathetic state, if you want to know, all right, so if you want to know what's bad for you, eat something, watch yourself when you're stressed out, watch what you want to eat when you're stressed out, and you know that that stuff's probably not good for you, right? For women, it's probably a lot more carbs. And what I found was if you can shift somebody's nervous system, which you can through their breathing, it can break those patterns and it can break those loops, because a lot of them are unconscious. Like when you're stressed out or you're not feeling well, you crave sugar and carbs and possibly more salty stuff that comes from whatever, like salty and savory. So yeah, I found that when you can shift the way that you're breathing and the nervous system, you can also shift not just how much and how well you detox, but also your relationship with detox. Because if you're in a stressed out state, it makes detox so much worse.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. One of the things I was just thinking about while you were saying that is when we're stressed, change is a change is a stress. Anything changing is a stress, right? So if when we're under a lot of stress, we don't like change because it adds to the system, but then detox is a change of state, right?
Yes.
So then the body starts saying, I'm stressed. Let's just stay like we are. Don't change anything. Let's just keep it like we are. And then you got the shallow breaths and all that stuff. And the other thing I wanted to add about the when people are stressed and they often choose bad foods, you'll like this. I've actually had some people use this idea. One of the ideas is, let's say if you're dumping, like you're stressed and you're dumping a lot of bile because your system's just stressed. Our old comfort foods that we ate before the whole, love your liver program are probably the things that are best at shutting down your detox. And then you feel more calm because it's you're loosing all this stuff into your system, and you eat these things that shut it down. So you feel better for a little while. And then the whole time you've just kind of made yourself more toxic along the way. So yeah, it does all these things can fit together completely. It's not just one thing, but if you address, I always try to tell people this, if you address one of the aspects of it, whether it's addressing the nervous system directly, whether it's, picking different foods when you eat them, whether it's, stress management, whether it's whatever, you can then positively affect the other things because there's less stress on the whole system. So yeah, this is awesome. Okay. Can the way someone breathes or moves actually change how well their body detoxifies, rebuilds tissue, or restores minerals? And how does that process work?
Yeah. So the way that you breathe impacts how you think, how you feel, how you move 100%. So because your breath is the first layer of anything that you do, whether you're in the bathroom, whether you're in bed, whether you're working, whether you're eating, you're always breathing. So that's going to impact how you move, because movement is also something that you're doing all the time, even if it is just breathing. Those two are permanently attached. And the way that you breathe and move combined together will impact how you feel, and how you feel will impact how you detox as well. So when your body and your fascia is in a, I would say almost like a coherent state, the way that it's supposed to be, what's happening is it's moving a lot of lymph, and that's our, I would say, like our waste management system. Like it's moving the lymph because it's pumping it properly. So that's impacting your detox. So it's impacting your detox when you're breathing, because our diaphragm is essentially the pump for the lymph. The lymph doesn't have its own pump. So the diaphragm is pumping it. A lot of people use a lot of like the bouncing stuff. A lot of people use like rebounders and stuff. And those are great. But after you learn how to breathe properly, after you learn how to engage your diaphragm, because I think of things in sequence, and I think of things as like the primary mover. Like if somebody comes to me and I see that they have pain in their neck, I would probably start with their breathing first. Why? Well, because the breathing is what you do all day, and it impacts how your neck feels. So if you're doing it improperly, that's a lot of repetitions of stress into that space. So I usually start with the breath with most people, just because most people are really poor at breathing. And both of them impact how our body processes nutrients 100%, because it's all interconnected. It's just like our modern world has dissected everything and put it into a specialized little box. But the reality is, I know guys that move a lot and move really well, and I'm sure they don't have any genetic dysfunctions. Because if you have like gene mutations, you're going to have to pay more attention to how you eat and how you do things. Like there's people out there, we used to laugh about it. There's guys you can put in a closet and they'll just get ripped and jacked, and they can eat whatever they want. And I think a lot of that has to do with how much and how well they move, at least heuristically. Like I'm sure there's no empirical PubMed studies on great movers, because there's just not that many of them around. But some of these guys are out there, they're not eating well, and they look and feel great just because their body can just move things easier and better. So yeah, the better you move, the better you breathe, the more slack you have in the other things that you do in your life, whether what you're consuming or something like along those lines. Does that make sense?
Yes. Actually, I wanted to add something to that. So we had one person in the Love Your Liver program who got that book Breath by James Nestor, and she started working on it, and she gave I don't remember if I read this testimonial on a show, but she gave this, she was like telling everybody, you need to work on your breath too, because it's a big deal. And that's where I had the update from you, and I talked about this a bit. And so she just said it relieved tons of things. And so like your breath could be holding you back in many ways. And then the other thing I wanted to add to how it could rebuild tissues and restore minerals, your breath is a major way your body regulates your pH. So if your pH is messed up, well, that affects minerals, or another way your body affects pH. So if you can breathe better and there's less stress on the pH system, or your body can regulate pH swings better, then that would obviously like affect things like your bones and other things of that nature. So yeah, it does absolutely all connect, whether we're just doing, thinking of concepts, or whether we're actually thinking of like, we get into the science of the respiration and all that, and how it affects alkalosis and acidosis and all that stuff. So yeah, it always all connects. That's what I like, is we can have, and I'm not saying your stuff is woo, but we can have really woo stuff, and then we can have like the physiological stuff. And if we're open to seeing the connections, and we can
there's definitely connections.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
There's definitely.
You've built what you call the Bulletproof Body approach, which is some of the stuff I'm doing. Can you explain what that is and how it helps people rebuild strength and resilience after years of stress, toxicity, and injury?
Yeah, so I've studied fascia and ligaments and tendons and connective tissues for the last 20 years from many different perspectives. Some of them from a Western perspective, a lot of them from Russia. There's a bunch of doctors in Russia that have been talking about it for multiple decades, in Chinese perspectives, Indian perspectives. And what I found was a lot of them use a lot of different language, but here's the deal. Like in the West, we are pushed to exercise our muscles, right? So because we're exercising our muscles, we're usually just doing it for aesthetic purposes, right? Like a lot of the influencers are now saying, oh, when you have more muscle mass, like you'll live longer. Or they have like these correlations that they're using, but what they're not looking at is most of these guys with large muscles move very poorly, and they're in a lot of pain for the most part because there's a study that recently came out that showed that if you do heavy weightlifting on Monday, by Thursday, and usually people exercise at least 3 times a week if they're doing weightlifting, by Thursday you still haven't fully recovered. So now you're in a constant state of debt in your body, and eventually your tissues break down. They just can't hold on to the health aspect of themselves, really, because every time they're in debt, they're creating some sort of adhesions inside of the tissue, whether it's fascia. But on the other end of that, when you're exercising and you're creating these really big muscles, you're definitely working them out in a specific way to create those big muscles, whether you're doing 5-5 or max lift or whatever. And what's happening is you're developing the muscles, which is like the engine, but you're not developing the connective tissues, the ligaments, the tendons, the fascia. And what's happening is it's like putting a Ferrari engine in a Honda Civic. Like eventually all the other parts are going to break just from the vibration and the force that engine could put out. When I was a kid and I was exercising at a public gym, I didn't go that day, but my friends told me that there is these 2 juice heads, steroid users, that got into a fight, and one of them punched the other one, and it was a really weak looking punch, and he tore his pec and his bicep at the same time, and they filled up with blood. And that's because they're so tight, and they're probably more in like a flexed sympathetic state, and their connective tissues are weak. So my approach to the Bulletproof Body is essentially to first open up the fascia to get it flowing, right? Because the fascia, it's almost 50 pounds of tissue inside of your body, and it permeates all of your ligaments, your tendons, your muscles, your organs. They even found that it goes inside of your cells. And what I believe that that is connected to is the Chinese like qi system, because fascia is piezoelectric, which means that with proper force, it creates its own electrical signals. And I think a lot of people, when they use a modern or even functional approach, for the most part, they're creating like short circuits in those areas. And then when you create short circuits and you have these fascial adhesions, what's happening is your body is creating adaptations to continue to function as a survival mechanism. But eventually you're going to have to pay the price for the overload of the way that you're training, because eventually your joints are going to break down. Like I read that over 30% of the United States suffers from chronic lower back pain. And that's just like one joint area. That's not even talking about the neck, the wrists, like the carpal tunnel, the tennis elbow, the golfer's elbow, the torn rotator cuffs that people have. Why? Well, because we're not moving in a natural fashion. So this approach hits it from, like, for example, the first one that we launched is the Bulletproof Neck. And the Bulletproof Neck, I teach them how to open up the fascia from a few different angles, because it needs to be opened up from a few different angles in order to start flowing again. Because fascia, when it's flowing properly, it's gliding like honey. But when it's not flowing properly, it has these adhesions. And this weekend, we were tanning hides. I was learning how to tan hides. And when you do it, you have to smoke it and heat it in order to dry the fat that you put on it. And I burnt mine a little bit, not like on fire, but it got crinkly. And when I was looking, and it took a lot of work to massage it out, and I was like, wow, this is the fascia tissue that we have too. And when you put too much into that tissue, it will close down and shrink, almost like Yeah, like that hide, like that hide. And it took so much work to open it back up. You have to rehydrate it, and not just with water, obviously, but through proper movement, through proper massage, through proper touch. So I teach that where you can become your own therapist. And then I teach very specific strength exercises for the very tiny stabilizer muscles in the spine. And then I also gave them a jaw training because the jaw is very deeply connected. The jaw and the mouth, like myofunctional stuff, is deeply connected to the neck as well. Because if your jaw is dysfunctional, and a lot of times it's because your breath is dysfunctional, because that makes your mouth makes you a mouth breather, and that mouth breathing creates the cycle of distorting the way that your mouth is shaped, and that in turn can create tension in the neck. It's just so interwoven and so interconnected. So with these programs, I've put in these last 20 years of effort to dissect it and to help people be able to treat themselves, because it's very sad to see people, like I had a guy come to me and he went to like 3 different chiropractors, physical therapists, and he hurt his neck. Really athletic guy, played soccer in college. And he couldn't do things anymore because his neck hurt and his fingers were numb because the nerves were shooting down. And in 2 weeks of doing the program, he sent me a message and he was like, hey, this is the first day that I was able to like do stuff with my family again. And that's really exciting to hear. You know, recently he told me, he reached out, he's like, you know, I was watching the stars in my new hot tub and I didn't hurt my neck looking up. And it's like these weird little like benefits that we don't think of, you know? So yeah, that's the approach. I mean, I try to hit it from as many angles as possible that are effective, and also to figure out what it's connected to that could be also the cause of it, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is. Again, it's all connected. And if you fix one part, you can help fix other things. So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's, what kind of transformations have you seen from, other than the guy you just talked about as well, but have you seen from people using these like breakthrough breathwork and bulletproof body systems, especially those who have tried, as they say, everything else? I've tried everything. So we always get those folks, right?
I've seen from the breathwork specifically, a lot of sleep improvements. So I've seen HRV go up significantly, sleep improvements, lower back pain, more energy, neck pain, not there as much anymore. Obviously, it takes a little bit more strengthening to get it back, but they're not taxing it anymore. Mental focus and clarity, better relationships. That's an interesting one because they're not so overreactive or shut down in their relationships. So they're not exploding out or bundling up. They're able to courageously set boundaries and have these conversations because they're able to take a deep breath or take a few deep breaths, or already be in that parasympathetic state where they're not exploding at the first provocation. Those are the really big ones. With the bulletproof body stuff, I mean, we had a guy come down that had to get off the floor using his fist for 20 years. He had to put his fist to the floor because he couldn't put his hand there. And I gave him the wrist protocols. I did them with him for 3 days. And he was able to get up off the floor and he has no more wrist pain. And just like less than a week of properly sending blood flow and energy into those connective tissues in that area. Ankle injuries. I had a woman come down and she was a college basketball player and then she started playing volleyball. Great athlete, playing volleyball, went up in the air, went for a spike, landed, broke her ankle and just messed up the connective tissue, but it healed. She went to physical therapy for 6 months and she still couldn't wear heels. Not that I would recommend those. She still couldn't wear heels and she couldn't go out dancing. She loved to dance and she couldn't even walk. So she came down for a weekend retreat, and that wasn't even the reason why she came down. It was just like, we fixed the nervous system stuff. Well, what other problems do you have? She's like, my ankle. So we went for a hike and she started crying on the hike. because she was in so much pain. And it was so sad to see. It's like 60 steps. We were in beautiful Wyoming and she's crying on a hike. So I gave her the exercises, and 6 weeks later, she sent me a text message and said, I went out dancing with my friends and I danced for 5 hours in heels and I had no pain. And it was just like, it's these little things that give us inspiration and love and charge us up in life that are really the benefits of not having pain and not having this internal discomfort or chaos that it's hard to, I mean, people quit smoking, people quit drinking, like all of these things because they're not craving some sort of comfort anymore because they have it inside of them. And I think these are very empowering practices that allow us to truly embody and remember who we came here to be. Because when we're in pain, it's very, very challenging to truly live life with purpose and with inspiration. Inspire, right? To inhale, to inspire, inspiration, and to share our gifts with the world, because that's what we really all want. Like we just want to remember who we are and then give it away. And we can't do that when we're in pain because we're in a state of scarcity. I don't have enough energy. I don't have enough time. It's constantly not enough. So this is what it opens up for people when they're not sick and in pain anymore. Your work, this work. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. So let's see. Why is it so important to rebuild the body's foundation, the breath, posture, fascia, and nervous system before or alongside doing detox protocols? What shifts when people do those things together?
Yeah, when you're sick, when you're toxic, you're weak. You're weak. So if you learn how to practice and incorporate breath work, you can become stronger internally. You can literally hold more pressure internally, and that would protect you from the outside world. Because a lot of people, what they feel weak because they're deflated. They feel weak and their chest isn't out, their posture is weak. And that contributes to living a life that's not fulfilled. And I think that when you're detoxing, it gets very challenging sometimes and almost demotivational because it doesn't feel like it's getting better, because you're in the chaos, you're in the Herx reactions, you're in the bile dumping. And I think it's important to get those small wins. I think it's important to get those small wins to be like, oh, you know what? I was able to tolerate this much more niacin, or I was able to tolerate this much more time in the sauna, or I remember to do these processes. And it's the same thing with the breath and the movement. Like, I don't recommend that people practice for 6-7 hours a day. I mean, 10-15 minutes is more than enough to develop parts of your body that might have been weak for so long. And if you do it with the detox process, not only are you going to start feeling better internally, you're going to enjoy looking at the person externally that looks back at you from the mirror. So your body will start to resemble how you want to feel internally. I think that was a big shift for me as a child when I started to exercise. Was I started to look different, and then I started to feel different. I think that's a very big thing where you've had this body for so long and it's looked this specific way and it's felt this specific way. And now you look in the mirror and you're like, oh, I'm a different human. I mean, it's kind of like growing your hair out, right? Like, I've been bald for so long and now I have hair. This is a different human looking back at me.
Yep. Well, you know, and that's,
shout out to Dr. Smith's new hair regrowth course.
Right. Well, that was a big thing actually for me, like to decide when Kelsey kind of suggested, she's like, well, why don't you start growing it out again? Because, you know, I got used to it for so long. So this is an important thing. Like you were saying, when we've been sick for whatever reason, and we get, let's say somebody's so sick that they're not exercising. They're not, Joe keeps moving us around. You get so sick, you're not exercising. So then as you start feeling better, like the movement will help, but you also have to get over that hump of actually of doing it. And because folks, don't do the thing where you're just like, I'm going to wait until I'm all better before I start exercising or something like that. Because yes, you may have kind of like got a trauma bond to like not exercising because you don't want to hurt yourself, because you may have hurt yourself or made yourself feel crappy in the past. Like try to always be looking for the wins. Like you were saying, if all of a sudden you can walk further, or if all of a sudden, this woman goes out dancing. I had a guy who he could eat like 3 foods when I started working with him, and just terrible GERD. He would get GERD from water. And we worked with him for a long time. We didn't really figure out his problem until we figured out the vitamin A thing. And he took Retin-A as a kid. And then all of a sudden then he was going out social dancing. So finally, like after 10 years, I think, of working with him. So these things, like if you get the small wins and always count your small wins, that's the key thing, is even if it's just a little thing, but you're doing better. Or actually I was talking to somebody who had a big stressor recently that normally would have just wrecked them, and they got through it just fine. So just look for ways that you're improving to kind of, keep on track. And then as you're able to add things, because like we're saying, it does all fit together. The movement thing, we need to have more of that in the program. I mean, I know it's important. I haven't put it in there specifically because that's not as much of my expertise in helping people with, of guiding them through that. I mean, I was a personal trainer, but like that was one-on-one, so making things bigger scope is something that I'd like to do. And that's one reason why we're talking today, is because that's definitely your thing. And I want to say that I do, like I said, I do your ankle stuff, the level 1 stuff, the old stuff that you had, that I know that my ankles are like bulletproof. And I used to roll. I think I rolled one ankle 3 times and had a cast on it, and I rolled the other ankle twice. So I had like a big history of, the research actually shows, right, your ankles get dumb after you sprain it.
Yes.
And then you start spraining them more because your ankles don't know where they are.
Yeah.
And now I know that with some of the training where we get into those atypical positions and we're moving through those atypical positions, that my ankles are very intelligent now, and they're strong in those positions. And I also do some of the squatting isometric stuff that you taught me. And I do that once a week. Like people in the gym look at me, and only one guy in the gym really appreciates what I'm doing. And he's kind of an Ido Portal guy. And he's like, "You're the only guy in the gym doing isometrics, bro." And I'm like, yeah. And you look at me at 50 now, and I'm, the other people, I see so many things in the exercise world that you're talking about, like not strengthening the tendons and the ligaments and the nervous system, and doing it in extended times and in weird positions. And I just think about when I'm older, I should say, as I get on in years, I see the people who I don't want to move like, and they're tight. Everything's tight. They're cramped down, slouched over and all that stuff. And I go, well, I want to do the opposite of that. And I also see the people who do like the powerlifting and the bodybuilding stuff, where they do the same exercise in a shortened motion over and over. And right, we get better at what we do a lot of, right? So they're getting better at just that movement in a shortened range. And I go, okay, so I want the opposite of that. So I'm doing like as many different exercises as I can, and then really trying to expand the range of them, because I want the opposite of what the normal people get. So it all, our training stuff, a lot of it overlaps. I need to get out and do more natural type movements, not just gym stuff, but I'm still trying to do what I can in the gym for that. Okay. So let's see. For anyone listening who's ready to take that next step with your stuff, what will they find inside the Breakthrough Breathwork and Bulletproof Body programs, and how can they fit those into the healing journey that they've already started here?
So very simple. The Breakthrough Breathwork program gives you different types of breathing routines that you can practice for 7 to 10 minutes every single day. And it'll help you to develop the zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, and start to shut off or shut down more consciously zones 4 and 5, where you're in a more stressed out sympathetic state. It'll also teach you how to deal with pressure better. One of the benefits that I found with a lot of people that I worked with was they were able to handle stressors better because they increased their capacity for stress. When you increase your breathing IQ or your vital lung capacity, you increase your capacity for stress. And that could be detox stress, relational stress, environmental stress, physical stress, emotional stress, psychological stress, spiritual stress, right? All of these things could be stressors. So learning how to breathe in a proper manner that's built for humans is going to make you a better human regardless. With the Bulletproof Body programs, I mean, it's very gentle. It's a very gentle approach to rebuilding your body, whether you start at -3, whether you're starting at 0, neutral, no pain, and you want to get to the plus. Because regardless of whatever your age is, you have to develop a buffer for your body. You want to develop a buffer for your body so that as it gets older, you can still maintain your movement patterns, your strength, your dexterity, and essentially your longevity. Because if you look at the things that are going to kill you, if you look at the 80-20 of the things that are going to kill you, it's actually very simple. It's going to be nervous system dysfunction because it's going to affect your mind, your body, your emotions. It's going to be toxicity, and it's going to be structural pain, like structural issues. In my experience, the people that really deeply struggle with depression, anxiety, and possibly even suicide also struggle with pain. Pain is one of the things that goes across the board. Toxicity is one of the things that goes across the board. Those are the commonalities in the modern world. And a lot of that has to do with our modern lifestyle. So these programs help to reverse our modern afflictions and modern traps that we got caught in, I believe, the most efficient way. And I'm constantly updating a lot of these programs. Like the Breakthrough Breathwork program is version 5 in the last 6 or 7 years. So I'm constantly, as I'm learning and testing it on people, I'm constantly upgrading it because, well, I want you to have the best possible thing. Like, just like you're constantly upgrading your programs, like things are changing. New data is coming out. Like some new data came out about fascia dysfunction, and they're linking it to anxiety and depression. In Russia, there was data that was coming out that was talking about how fascia dysfunction could lead to oncological diseases as well. So there's a lot of links with all of this because it's all connected, right? Like it's all connected.
Well, if the fascia is running everywhere, right, the lymph is running through the fascia. And so if the fascia is tight or knotted up or however you want to put it, not working as well as it should, it's gonna block the lymph, the sewage system of the body. And that's not going to work as well either. So you can make it all work together, or you can let it kind of just sit and not do its thing right. And the thing I've been thinking about lately is whether it's physical stuff, whether it's mental, emotional stuff, whether it's spiritual stuff, like when people have issues, however they came about, if you're not fixing them, if somebody's not actually working on them, they're only going to tend to get worse over time, right? Like pain tends to get worse over time if you don't do anything to address it. Like mental, emotional issues, baggage, if you will, gets, if you keep reinforcing the loop, it gets worse. So these detox, if you don't ever detox and you keep putting stuff in, you just get more toxic. So these things are all just kind of connected, and we can't work on everything all at once, but you can take a chunk at a time. And I'm excited to see the new breathwork stuff. I saw the old stuff. I hadn't gotten into the new stuff, and I'm really excited to. I need to. I wanted to address a thing in the chat. And you may want to address this too. Somebody said, Heather Parker said, I'm from a swimming background. I unconsciously find myself holding my breath or just not breathing on a regular basis. Let me say something about this first, because I just did something with this. I got into a breath hold work program, like breath holding as a form of almost like meditation and trying to get to hold your breath longer. And I was doing it, and I kind of liked it at the start. And then I got into a stressful phase of my life, a little stressful couple months. And all of a sudden my body was like, don't do this. It was like, don't do the breath holding right now. Cause I realized it was, that's a form of stress, right? You're not breathing. And I went, okay, this must just be, it's too much stress. My body says, don't add this on right now. We got enough on the other thing. And I thought, I'm not really that interested in learning how to hold my breath forever. So I want to look into some other stuff for stress management. And then I thought, well, maybe this isn't stress management. Maybe this is just measured stress on the body. So anyway, if you want to address like people who are, let's say, training to hold your breath and other things of holding your breath, how that fits into the breath work and all that stuff.
Yeah. So if you have trained in the past for holding your breath and that's your only state that you can tap into, that's going to be a problem when you go into stress. What I like to do is I like to first focus on the biomechanics, like what is the proper way to breathe and where is the proper way to breathe. And then when you master that, which doesn't take that long, depending on how old you are, take a month for every decade, right? Like a month for every decade to like really get to like an 80-20 level, like an 80% level. And then you can start layering other stuff. You can do CO2 tolerance training. You can do breath hold training. Like all of these things are just layers on top of the machine. They're essentially the color of your paint job of the car. Like this is going to be the engine. So when you find yourself holding your breath, that's usually a problem. Like that's first of all, like you're not detoxing. You're not breathing anything out. You might also find yourself yawning more. When you find yourself yawning more, that means that's your body's way of taking in some air, right? So there's nothing wrong with breath holding, period. But there is a sequence of events that's very important in terms of like before you run and sprint, you want to learn how to crawl. So if you look at babies, for example, when they skip certain milestones, what happens is there's neurological issues that happen. There's movement pattern issues that develop. There's possibly even psycho-emotional issues that develop through the physiological milestones being skipped. So a lot of people want to do all the cool stuff, right? Like they want to have a 15-minute breath hold and they want to do this, but like if they're not breathing in the right place, like that can lead to more problems down the line. And you want as many different ways of being so that you can be flexible in your approach to life, because it's not the strongest that survive. It's not the fastest. It's not the smartest. It's the most adaptable. So can you adapt your breath for public speaking, for parenting your children, for training on the mats, for detoxing when you're not feeling well and you're laying in bed and you're moving and not stagnating that energy. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, I was thinking about it where you were talking earlier about, people breathing 14 to 17 times a minute, right? And so they're breathing like too shallow and too much. But then also the other extent of that would be like people holding their breath and not breathing enough. So you could be too far on either end. And bad habits just they come about however they come about. We can often train things specifically to get out of them. I wanted to read another comment here in the chat.
I also think that most people are living on both ends of that spectrum because they're over breathing and then holding their breath
when they get stressed, right? They hold their breath when they get stressed. Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to notice that.
Almost like a.
Yeah. Yeah. I think most of us, when we pay attention or when we start to bring our attention to our breathing, then all of a sudden we start going, oh, wait, like I'm not even breathing, when they get stressed or whatever. And then if they start counting their resting respirations and they see that they're high. Yeah, that's definitely something. So this kind of feeds into this next chat. Alicia Adams said, I find myself breathing shallow often. When I do intentional breathing through box breathing or whatever, it's more difficult to breathe deep, like a struggle. You have anything to say about that?
Yes, that goes into the layers of sequencing. So if you learn where to breathe, because box breathing is how to breathe.
Right.
And it's a practice of how. So first you have to open up where, and then you won't have any problems with how. You can layer whatever how you want, whether it's box breathing, triangle breathing, circular breathing. all of the breathings. But first, you open up the where, which is essentially your physiological potential that you're expanding, and then you layer in the hows. So opening up zones 1, zones 2, zones 3, and then you can start doing box breathing, and also like there's so many challenges in box breathing. You can go 4-4-4-4, you can go 12-12-12-12, 20-20, 20-20, right? Like there's so many challenges that you can develop, and it won't be a struggle anymore. Because think about it like this. I think about jiu-jitsu, or I think about like high level breathing. That's essentially an application that our body can do. But if our body doesn't have the proper software and hardware in order to do it, well, that's going to burn out our system. That's going to cause more stress. So we want to upgrade the hardware and the software through developing the foundations, so that then we can use that in all of the other areas of our lives that we enjoy doing things, whether it's hiking, whether it's barefoot trail running, even gardening, right? Like you're going to have to adapt that. And I think a lot of problems with a lot of breathwork programs that I've tried is most of them are in a sitting position or in a laying position, and they don't teach them how to develop it laying, sitting, standing, moving, and then specific to whatever their practice is, if that makes sense.
And you hit on that in your program?
I start to give them ways of doing it laying, sitting, also pressurized. We do some pressurized breathing. I mean, there's layers there, and then I teach them some of the hows as well.
Cool. Let's see. Susan Stewart said, I've noticed that singing greatly improves health and detox. So she was just, I mean, singing is kind of forced deeper breathing, right? It's one of the things. If you want to add more on that.
Yeah. So singers have high level singers have pretty developed breathwork routines and programs, but they're at a very high level. The singers, this would improve, like where you breathe will improve your singing. You can hold notes longer. You can, because it's all an exhale, right? Like it's all about your exhale. So how long you hold your note is going to be your exhale. That's also going to improve your CO2 tolerance, because when you notice that you hold your breath, which is also like CO2 tolerance, your mind starts to go crazy. It starts panicking as if you're dying. So singing and holding those notes for a long time is a very similar process, because it's a forced slow exhale as you're doing it. And also it changes your voice. I think she mentioned that as well. When you take a big inhale and you can breathe from a deeper place, right? Like you can change the way that your tone is through breath work. But yeah, singers have a pretty good breath work practice that's specialized for singing. And I've studied a lot of the singing practices as well.
Awesome. Well, I guess, do you have anything you'd like to add to kind of wrap this up? Anything we didn't cover? What are the next Bulletproof Body courses coming out?
The next one that's coming out is going to be the shoulders. That's the next problem that we see. Then we have the spine. So the Chinese say you are as young as your spine is flexible. So we're going to have the spine. We're going to have the hips and lower back. Then elbow, wrist, and hand development, because they say that grip strength is a correlation to longevity. And grips are important. They're definitely important. They're important in everything that we do, because that's how we communicate with the world. That's one of the ways. So we have visual information coming in, and then we have sensory information in through our hands specifically and through our feet. So then we're going to do knees, ankles, and redeveloping our feet. So understanding that your toes have to be able to spread. So you want your toes to be able to like open, right? If you open your toes, well, you can go, like if you look at babies' toes, they can spread. But our modern day footwear encases our feet in tubes. So that took me a really long time to figure out how to open that in myself and how to open that in others. because barefoot walking and barefoot shoes just isn't enough. You actually have to redevelop those muscles and the connective tissues in your feet. And also, this is really interesting, your plantar fascia on the bottom of your foot is the thickest band of fascia outside of your IT band in your body. And if that's the thickest, it's the thickest for a reason. And one of the reasons is because it sends information all the way up the body. So, and we have this really big, like, back superficial line of fascia, and it connects the feet to the back of the head. So if your feet are messed up, you're going to have upstream problems going throughout the whole body. But if your feet are healthy, it's going to create more flow going up your body. So that's going to be one of the next programs. And then we're developing something called the SELA method. I've developed it. I just haven't recorded it. All of these programs take a long time to record. And so the SELA method is basically my method of strength work. I barely use any weights, and we use mostly specific movement patterns and isometric patterns to develop the whole body. So I showed you the lower body stuff, but we have full upper body development, and you can keep your muscle, you can keep your strength, possibly even more strength in just 10 to 20 minutes a day. Yeah, I mean, this is my contribution to the world. Somebody asked me recently, Rome, are your kids going to take over like teaching? Because like, what if you die and it disappears with you? And I'm like, hopefully we can get it all down before that happens.
Right. Right. Yes, very much so. Well, yeah, that's amazing. I gotta endorse Rome's, like, the lower body stuff that I do from him is just, I do it once a week, and I know it's getting easier each time I do it. And I've been doing this for months and months now, and people in the gym, like, nobody else could do it in the gym. So I just worked up to it, and the isometric stuff that I'm doing of his stuff and the ankle stuff is just, it's great. It expanded on some other stuff that I knew from before, but it took it to another level. So I really want to thank Rome for that. And I'm doing the basic stuff. So you can imagine if you get into your more advanced stuff that it's going to be really wild. So, okay, well, let's just wrap it up. Joe, if you could post the links to Rome's stuff so people can see it again. So there's the link to Rome's breathwork, breakthrough breathwork protocol. That's the website that Joe's showing. The links to these will be down in the video info. And also, Joe put them in the live chat, so you'll have them there. And then, Joe, if you want to show the bulletproof neck, there's that too, preventing BJJ neck injuries. I would endorse it for anybody who has neck issues. Like I had big neck issues in the past. People actually, when I was in college, called me Swamp Thing because I wouldn't turn my neck. I would just turn my whole body. So yeah, I think I've gotten a little bit better with that. I've done some neck work myself. And then, didn't you do, is that program out for like longevity and BJJ?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's called the Tao of Jiu-Jitsu. So Joe can get it. It's a high performance protocols /Tao - ebook.
Okay. And that was very inexpensive. I saw the price. It's
like $7. And yeah, it's made for jiu-jitsu people because that's what it says on the title. But the reality is it works for anybody that has, Joe, if you just go to online courses on the website, you go to highperformanceprotocols.com, online courses, and then you just click it.
It'll be there.
I mean, yeah, like Dr. Stern, for example, he's one of the guys that wrote like a testimonial on it. He was just like, you can use this for anything. Like, this is just, it's just like it's a philosophy of how to approach moving around in the modern day world so we don't burn out, like, so that you can keep playing with your grandkids and doing the things that you love and stay independent. Because there's a reason why adult diapers are going up 15% every year in sales, like, because people are just becoming sicker and fatter, and we don't want that for you. That's why we do the work that we do. Like, yes, it also makes a living for us, but that's not the point. The point is we can make a living doing anything. And this work is way harder to make a living with because 72% of the United States is overweight or obese. They're not into this. So if you're listening to this, you're already ahead of the curve because you're interested in your personal growth, development, and health as a human being. And I think that's really important because that's where it starts. Like every building first started with a thought and an investment in yourself. So, yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to add this. Like, if you wanted to look into Rome's like approaches and stuff, that Tao of Jiu-Jitsu, even if you don't do any martial arts or Jiu-Jitsu at all, would be a really great place to start. Yeah, just to get a taste, and then if you decide you want to move deeper, that would be an approach you could do to test it out. So yeah, well, that's about all we have.
Yeah, if people have any questions, they can always reach out. Like, no problem. We have.
How do they get in touch? Through that website?
Yeah, they can go through the website. They can put their email in the list, and then once they get their first email, they can just respond to it, and I'll answer. Or we have a live chat, not a live chat, but semi-live chat, where they can ask a question there, and I'll get back to them as soon as possible.
Yeah. Okay. I see. You got the chat on there. You got your email on there, and then you got the newsletter. Yeah. Awesome. So yeah, if you guys want to get in touch with Rome, ask him more questions about his stuff, I think that's a great idea. I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be adding more of Rome stuff to my routines because I've been slacking on my breath work. So, it happens to all of us. But yeah, so Joe, if you want to, I guess we'll just, if we want to run the links, Joe, we'll head over the last things. But yeah, thank you very much for joining us, Rome. If you guys want to see my past live streams, we got the link down there on the YouTube. You can look under the live for the live streams. And then if you can't find a live stream on the live link, then go to the videos link. That's where the ones that we had to edit for the Gestapo, that's where you can find those. And then we always have the Rumble channel. The Rumble channel has everything unedited. So if you ever want to find something or you can't find it, or you just want to go to Rumble instead, that's always there. This episode will be there soon. NutritionDetective.com is the main website where you can find our stuff. You can find the testimonial, the Love Your Liver program. That's on the consultation tab on the main website. You can also find it at members.nutritiondetective.com. And then you can find our Instagram. We changed it. So for those of you who are on our old Instagram, the.realnutritiondetective.com. Now I have to fix that in the info box because I put the dot in the wrong place. Dang it. Rome, what's your Instagram?
Mind Body Sensei.
Mind
Body Sensei. Or
okay.
Rome's. I have two.
Okay.
One is like a business, one is a personal.
Okay, cool. And then my Substack, where we've been posting stuff lately, my 6-part article on rebuttal to somebody on the internet was there. So yeah, drgarrettsmith.substack.com. And then, if you want to find out more about toxic bile paradigm, episodes 53 and 71, the basics of toxic bile paradigm, or also used to be called toxic bile theory. I am working with Beth on redoing those, updating them in a more comprehensive and updated way. So we're going to be working on redoing the toxic bile stuff. And this was Love Your Liver live stream number 220 with our guest Rome Za. Thank you for coming, Rome, and going over breath work and fascial release and exercise stuff, fitness stuff, physical fascia, all that stuff. So I highly recommend you guys check out his stuff. Like I said, I do it on a regular basis and I love it. So thanks for joining us, Rome.
Thank you for having me, brother. I really appreciate you. I really appreciate the work that you're doing out in the world and how you put yourself out there. Like, I know it's very unnatural in a lot of ways to put yourself out there. And I think it's very courageous and inspirational on how you do it. And I appreciate you.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate you too. And I plan on visiting your retreat place out in Idaho soon when I go up, and Kelsey and I will go and pay you a visit. Yeah, for sure. You always have a bed. You always have a bed to sleep in. We have a king size bed for you right there. Awesome, man. Well, I will. We'll wrap it up here. Thanks again for coming, and we'll see you all guys next week. Okay. Bye now.